I was kind of just thinking earlier about, what is motivating all of this activity around spirituality or self-help or therapy or, counseling or whatever it is. Any kind of endeavor, like philosophy or whatever, science even. It's sort of like any endeavor that seeks to look more deeply at reality. Anything that has this sense of wanting to take a deeper look at what's really going on. Or in the case of more personal endeavors like psychology and therapy and stuff, it seems to be motivated a lot of the time by the sense of personal suffering. So that seems to come into the picture a lot, more so than something like science, which is more kind of externalized and let's look at the world. To me, it has a similar flavor, of just wanting to explore more deeply than we're used to. We're wanting to take a deeper look than what we conventionally are encouraged to do or feel is appropriate to do within the context of day-to-day life and the way in which we're conditioned. So basically for me what continues to happen is a deeper and deeper looking at, what is reality and how is it really functioning and who am I and what's really going on, what's actually real about the experience, what's real about me and what's added on, what's concept. And I think, to whatever degree we do, I think this goes on in, other fields that aren't maybe considered as deep or as profound or whatever. I think there's an innate kind of yearning in human beings to really want to explore our reality, and I think ultimately to come home to something, to come home to something real. I think that's what motivates a lot of these types of endeavors, like therapy and what, stuff like that, counseling. Because with therapy, for me, there's a notion that if I'm able to get a lot of this right, if I'm able to get, the various endeavors that I undertake in therapy correctly, if I can kind of sort out my childhood and if I can forgive my parents and, work on my issue with women and, still haven't resolved that one. But, if I can do all these things in the right order and in the proper way, that maybe I'll come home to something that's real, or I'll find my true essence, or I'll become the perfect version of myself, or something like that. And even in science, there can be the sense of, if we understand the world in the right way and understand how the universe works, we can find reality, we can come home to reality, instead of believing the surface level of things. Like if we, go deeper and deeper into what matter actually is, maybe we'll find the truth, and that will be like a very astonishing revelation that will give us something that we want. And I think ultimately what we really want is to come to rest and to come home, and also, to continue exploring, because it's sort of like the idea I had about spirituality was, I just want to end my own suffering. I just want to put an end to my suffering, and that's it. I just want to not suffer. That's all I want. Because when you're in suffering, it can be so overwhelmingly painful that the only thing that's driving, what it felt like is the only thing that's driving me forward, driving this body forward, is not wanting to suffer. And then when I hear about the truth, in whatever context, for me it was mainly non-dual spirituality and other forms of spiritual endeavor. And then when I heard about not suffering being a consequence of doing the inquiry or going into those teachings or something, then it's sort of like, okay, well, I'll do that because I just don't want to suffer. I'll do whatever is required not to suffer. And to me, is that always going to be the motivating factor in my life? Because presumably I would always have to suffer in order to want to explore the truth. So suffering, this is kind of hard to explain, but to me now it doesn't feel like suffering needs to be, a continuous and, principal driving force in our yearning and our sort of impulse to deepen our understanding of the truth. It feels like it's more like a childlike, joyful exploration of the truth. And the suffering is like just a tip of the iceberg. It's sort of like the first layer of it. The gross identification and the sense of being very separate and solid and all that sort of thing. And yet, once that's seen through, once we see through, okay, well, that I, that me sense isn't actually real, is not actually what I am, is just a fabrication, or is it just a believed in sense. It's not actually, the sum total of my being, or it's not ultimately real at all. So there can be that sense, and yet there's still, it's like there's still this love that seems to move us in some way. It moves us to a deeper and deeper falling into itself, and it's like a play. It's like a play of self-discovery. It's more just a conscious exploration of it. It's like being a kid, and yet waking up to what it's like to be a kid. So it's being able to appreciate it in a deeper way, in a more mature way. Because when you're, when we're young children, prior to the experience of suffering, in a way it's like being asleep, enjoying ourselves but not knowing we're enjoying ourselves, and then going through the suffering and going to therapy and doing spirituality. It's like being conscious of non-enjoyment, of non-fun, non-happiness, unhappiness. And then in the discovery, in the coming home, and the unfoldment of the unconditional love into our dream, there's more of a conscious recognition of the enjoyment of love itself, the enjoyment of the one as it manifests and as it is non-manifest. So that it's sort of just, it doesn't stop, that's kind of, even with nothing happening, it doesn't stop. Even though, in the sense of seeing through all the manifest happenings and the objective solid world and all my solid belief systems and all this sort of thing, life itself doesn't need to stop. My beliefs can stop. My beliefs about who I am and what reality is, they can be seen through and they can cease functioning. But you see, I didn't know what life was. I didn't know what it meant to be alive at all. All I knew in terms of a happening was my beliefs and what I was holding to be true. It's sort of like what I was looking through and thinking, it's just sort of another case of a set of glasses, basically. I don't know, this has all been said before, so it's kind of just a redundancy, but there's a real sense that life just loves being itself, and it seems there's always something evolving, there's always something unfolding. So I think the invitation is not to stop and build up any type of finish line for ourselves. Because if I had a nickel for every time I thought I was done, right? There's the problem right there. I wouldn't have to, worry about income, because I fooled myself over and over, and I'm probably fooling myself right now, in some other way that I haven't even seen yet. So that's the beauty of this. We never have to be done. It never has to be over. Certain aspects of it can be seen through and can be discarded if they're no longer useful, like suffering. You know, we don't have to suffer anymore. That's the liberation that is talked about in spirituality, is that, you know, it's not that I don't have to suffer anymore. The suffering I can be seen to not, to not be what I am, to be not real, to be a fabrication. It's always hard to talk about this in a way, because it's far beyond my ability, or I would say anybody's ability, to accurately convey. And yet I feel as though the evolution and the progression of the unfoldment of the consciousness enables us to talk about it in ways that are more accurate and more poignant and more empowered. There's an empowerment that comes into the organism. It's sort of like love can come in and fill us with an intelligence and a gratitude that allows us to sort of overflow with what this really is. And that seems to have a very, very powerful effect in terms of the manifestation, because I would say right now most of the manifestation is full of different belief systems that compete with each other, and the main theme of those belief systems seem to be about fear and limitation and, what would you say, different points of view that are taken as true. So different versions of belief systems that are kind of being thrown around as truths. You know, that's a very convoluted way to say it, but it's a substitution for the truth that seems to be causing us to suffer. So, you know, the truth is the freedom. It's the freedom from having to be right about my beliefs, and it's also the freedom to be able to explore what reality actually is without having to hold on to these very cumbersome and very difficult systems of thought, because you always have to reconcile them. They're always very kind of, you know, they're cumbersome and they're hard to knock together, because something can happen to blow apart a belief system, and then there's like, you know, the cleanup crew comes into ground zero and it's like, okay, we can salvage that, and this guy still survived. He survived the, you know, the collapse of the belief system, so we'll formulate another one. And that's the sense of frustration that can happen, because it always seems like there's another lie, there's another thing to see through, there's another dream to wake up from. And yet it can be taken, we can start from the truth, we can start from what we know for sure, which is the loving embrace of reality, which is all encompassing. You know, it's all pervasive, it's all permeating, and we can start with that. So that's the invitation, is that we can just allow that to trickle into whatever reality seems to be, you know, our experience, and just allow that to deepen unto itself, and not have to really worry about what's happening in terms of, you know, micromanaging anything. We just stick with what's real and allow that to really sort of steer our ship, so to speak, you know, instead of the very limited notions of separation and personal suffering. So thanks a lot for listening, and I know there's been a lot of videos, I don't know why, I just know that it's just happening this way, so thank you.